Welcome to the Resiliency of the Human Spirit podcast, where we share all about human triumphs for the collective's healing and empowerment. I am your host, Priscilla Hanley. My guest today is Barbara Walsh. Barbara became a board-certified master health coach after overcoming breast cancer naturally, without surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. Now 8 years cancer-free, she helps women fearlessly take control of their health to avoid being sidelined by a breast cancer diagnosis in the future and to regain their energy and feel confident when they look in the mirror now. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Barbara on right now. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today with me and our audience. So I'm really excited to have this conversation because I think it's going to be very beneficial to women, specifically women who have just received a cancer diagnosis. So I will open the floor to you now to share your story and more specifically, the actions you took or the mindset shifts you made to heal yourself naturally from cancer. That's phenomenal.
Okay, well, I'll just give you a little background on myself. Like you introduced me as a board certified master health coach. I, prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, I was not a poster child for anything healthy. I'm just going to put that out there. I mean, there are some people out there that, they spend their whole lives, in the pursuit of health and wellness and eating well and taking really excellent care of their bodies. I was not one of those people. So I'm just going to put that out there, first of all. So when I went 8 years ago, when I was told I had breast cancer, I had just gone for like a routine mammogram, my annual kind of mammogram. And honestly, when I went in there, it never, ever crossed my mind that I would come out with anything other than just, okay, see you next year. And this time was so different. They saw something suspicious. They really impressed upon me to go get a biopsy, which, I did that. And then afterward, they told me that I had breast cancer and I was shocked. I was terrified and I was
Right.
shocked. And so before this, like my husband and I had just celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary. My son, I have a son, and I think he was 14 at the time. And so, we had been in this stage where we had been planning like what we were going to do once he got out of high school and went on to college and moved out and did, whatever he was going to do. We were thinking about, wow, what are we going to do? And all of those wonderful plans we had kind of went out the window when this diagnosis came in because, any hope that I had for a beautiful future with my husband was like, it was gone because all I could picture for myself was really going in and out of hospitals, getting infusion treatments, feeling pretty bad overall because I knew the little I knew was that, the treatment is a pretty devastating process. And so anyway, we went right away to a woman who was considered to be like the number one breast surgeon in my area. And, the first question I asked her, because I was so overwhelmed and frightened, and I said to her, how did this happen to me? And I was really surprised by her answer. It was very dissatisfying because she said to me, well, we don't really know. It's, bad luck, bad genes, bad cards. I mean, to me, these were very non-scientific answers.
Yeah.
And they didn't really instill confidence in me that if they couldn't tell me why it happened to me, how could they really know how they were going to resolve the problem? Because I mean, granted, I did not have a scientific background, but common sense would tell you that there's cause and effect. So like if you do something, there's usually a corresponding reaction that happens. I mean, again, I'm not scientific, but it's like basic common sense in physics,
Right.
And it bothered me that no one could tell me why. And so when we went in there, I got to tell you, for anyone who has been diagnosed with a cancer, any cancer, breast cancer, there is this tremendous atmosphere of fear and pressure when you get in that situation. And there is this pressure to get right into treatment, like immediately, before you can even really process what's going on to you, before you can even, wrap your head around what they've told you. They want you to make these life-changing decisions
Right.
and in that very moment. And so for me, the treatment protocol was the same treatment protocol that they basically give to every person who's been diagnosed with any cancer, which is surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. That's it. And in my case, I had a estrogen positive breast cancer. So they wanted me to take an estrogen blocker pretty much for the rest of my life, and that was tamoxifen. And so I couldn't really agree to those treatments because my husband asked the doctor, if my wife does this, will she be cured? And I got another really weird answer. And she said to me, well, there's no guarantees. We'll consider this to be a success if there's no recurrence within 5 years. And I thought about it and I thought 5 years. And I thought about the treatments they were offering to me. And, you know, chemotherapy is well documented in scientific literature to cause cancer. It's just a known fact that it is a carcinogen. And you can look that up in the NIH, you can look it up, in anywhere, and it's documented. So that causes cancer. And radiation, as we know, causes cancer. I mean, think about it. When you go to the dentist and they want to take a little x-ray of a little area of your mouth, they load you up with the big metal vest, and the tech person runs out of the room quickly to
Right.
hit that button because they don't want to be exposed.
Yeah.
You're right. So before, to take that, and what is that? Like a 2-second process
Mm-hmm.
after they put the vest on you and all that. So we know that causes cancer. And interestingly enough, I found out later, I didn't know it at the time, but I found out later that tamoxifen, which is widely prescribed and used, is also in scientific literature. It's been documented to cause uterine cancer. So as I was thinking about this, I'm thinking, every single thing that they're offering me, with the exception of surgery, is known to cause cancer. So I'm thinking to myself, if I do this, it's probably a pretty good bet that if I get through the treatment protocol, that probably after that 5-year mark, it wouldn't be unlikely that I would be developing some other type of cancer because I would be exposing myself to cancer causing
Yeah.
things, right? And so I couldn't agree to the protocols. And I just said I needed time. So I went home, and my husband and I are Christians, and I needed to spend a lot of time in prayer because that that was important to me, to get clarity and to feel like I had a direction, and more than that, to just have peace, because like I said, it was pretty terrifying. So while I was spending this time trying to center myself and figure out what I was going to do, um, I was waiting actually to get a second opinion at like the numero uno cancer
Mhm.
mecca here in the Northeast. And people probably would know that that's Sloan Kettering. They're known for eons of that's the place to go. But I really couldn't get in there right away. I had to wait. And that actually turned out to be a real blessing for me because it really gave me time to spend that time in prayer, and I really felt led to do a lot of research. And so, because I wanted to just know, I wanted to understand like what was happening to me. And so, as I started to research, I discovered a lot of really amazing things that I just did not know. Like I learned like what causes cancer. I learned that why some people get cancer and some people don't. I learned that this is probably going to be a mind blowing for a lot of people, but I learned that 98% of the time cancer grows in the body for up to 10 years before it can be diagnosed, before it can be felt, before it can be picked up on any type of scan or mammogram.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this thing has been growing in my body for 10 years. And I was clueless. I had absolutely no idea. And then I thought about, and then I was, as I was researching, I was learning that, you know, the key to getting better from this, or even probably preventing it in the first place, was actually the answer to that was in my immune system, like how well my immune system was functioning. And clearly mine was not functioning because I was compromised because I developed something, right? Because
Mhm.
our immune system's built into our bodies to like help us get better when we get sick, or help us to not get sick if we come in contact with something, right? So clearly mine wasn't working. So then I thought, okay, well, how the heck do you support your immune system? And that's when I discovered the power of food and nutrition, the power of our daily choices that we make every day, lifestyle. And so I thought, I weighed it out and I thought, okay, well, if I had undergone treatment, conventional treatment, as was being offered to me, it would be, like I said, 5 years. If I get through the treatment and I come through okay, I have probably 5 years, and then maybe I would have recurrence. But in that 5 year time period, I probably would be sick. And I thought to myself, I really don't want to spend, if I do have only 5 years to live, I really did not want to spend it sick. I didn't want to spend it, you know, with my head in the toilet and bald. I guess that's vain of me, but I just couldn't picture myself spending the last few years of my life in that existence. And so then I thought about how the cancer had taken 10 years to even get to a point where it could be detected. And that more than likely, because it wasn't like a very aggressive cancer, there are some that are more aggressive than what I had, but for me, it wasn't aggressive. And I thought, if it took 10 years to get to where I could find it, it probably would take another 10 years before it would develop to the next,
Mhm.
or progress to the next stage. And so I started weighing it. I thought, well, 5 years sick and maybe getting sick again afterward, or 10 years of doing nothing, right?
Mhm.
And I thought it's like a crapshoot, really, because there's no guarantees. There was no guarantees anywhere.
Right.
And so, not that doing nothing was an option, obviously. I was really wanting to be responsible. And prior to this whole experience, I had always been a very, very compliant patient. Like anytime I was sick, I went to the doctor, whatever they gave me, I took it without question. And I would just do what I was told because I thought, well, these guys are the experts. They ought to know, right? So, anyway, as I thought about it and I prayed about it, it made so much more sense to me to nourish my body so my body could actually heal, rather
Mhm.
than bombard it with all these cancer causing toxic agents, hoping that I survive and maybe I could get well afterward. And
Right.
so that's what made sense to me. And then this is interesting. In that time period, as I was discovering this, I met a woman who had been diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 20 years prior to my diagnosis. And she was thriving. She
Wow.
was out, telling people. She was like a motivational speaker. She was out there telling people about her experience and what she did. And it amazed me to meet somebody like that, because number one, I know a lot of people who have been affected by cancer. I know people have been diagnosed with cancer. And I honestly don't know one person who ever lived 20 years after a diagnosis. And if they did live 20 years after a diagnosis, I don't know anyone who was not in a frail or depleted,
Mhm.
compromised state. So she was amazing, this woman. And she said to me, she said to me, even if you're thinking about doing something natural, you probably have more time than you've been led to believe. I'm sure you had a lot of pressure in that situation and you feel like you need to immediately do something, but you really have more time they're probably telling you, she said. And she said, if you decide to try it and it doesn't work for you, You could always go back. They'll always give you surgery. They'll always give you radiation. They'll always give you chemo. Nobody's ever going to tell you no, that you can't
Hmm.
have those things. And it was crazy enough, but it was like an epiphany. It was like, wow, what a great plan B.
Yeah.
I try this. I'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'll
Yeah.
go. Right. And so at that moment, it just made sense. It was like something that just gave me so much peace and confidence. And not only that, but it gave me back control over my situation, because part of the fear and the overwhelm and the pressure that comes from a diagnosis like that is the feeling that your life is totally spinning out of control. There's
Hmm.
nothing you could do. You're totally blindsided. And that feeling leads to this feeling of helplessness, because you feel like there's nothing.
Right.
There's nothing left for you. It's like weird. It's hard to explain, but that is kind of how it feels. And thinking about doing something natural was so empowering for me, because I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I can do something that's going to hopefully make a positive impact on my body, right? And part of my logic in doing that was I thought, well, I'm going to do this. And if it doesn't work, if nothing else, I'm going to make my body as strong as I possibly can if I have to go into conventional treatment, so that hopefully I can withstand whatever that
Hmm.
is, and
Right.
recover from it. So those were my motivations. So, as I said before, I was not a poster child for anything healthy, but I was like your basic American woman. I was like a wife, a mom. I worked, I had a profession, I owned a business, and I was constantly running around stressed out and, you know, eating whatever was fast, whatever was convenient. I was a big fan of the drive-through. Sometimes because of the way I was raised, like, we never were taught anything about, you know, how food affects our bodies. We just ate stuff because it tasted good. I mean, let's
Right.
be honest.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm half Italian. I'm half Filipino. We had you talk about terrific tasting food. We were all about that.
Right.
Unfortunately, some of that food was probably not, the most beneficial food, although I will admit it tastes amazing, right? And that's how we were raised. We never thought about stuff like that. I never cared. I never cared about what I ate. It never rang in my head that, everything that I'm eating and drinking is actually a choice. And besides the fact that however stuff tasted, it was impacting my body one way or another, either in a positive way or it was possibly contributing to, illness of some kind. And it
Right.
never occurred to me that there would be a direct link between some of that stuff and cancer. And so, it became really important to me to strengthen my immune system, because as I mentioned before, when I learned about, like what causes cancer and what doesn't, really what that means is that some people will develop cancer and others won't, depending on how strong their immune system is. And mine was not. And I didn't know that it wasn't, but there were signs that it wasn't. And that's an important thing to kind of understand, because I was mentioning to you about that whole 10-year period. There was 10 years where something
Hmm.
was going on in my body, but I was like not clued into what that was.
Right.
And how did I know that? I didn't, but I should have, because I experienced a lot of really weird symptoms in that 10-year period, a lot of chronic things, like I had recurring sinus infections. I caught colds all the time. You name it, I would catch a cold. I'd catch a cold, I'd get better, and then I'd catch another cold. It was like constant. I had gastrointestinal issues. I had heartburn. I had stomach aches. Sorry because we just met, and sorry to all you listeners, TMI. I had constipation. I
Hmm.
had uh, urinary tract infections, I had yeast infections, I had rashes. I had all this stuff going on constantly. I
Wow.
mean constantly. Sometimes it overlapped, sometimes it didn't, but it was always like a back-to-back thing. And as I mentioned earlier, I was always compliant. Every time something like this would crop up, First thing I did, made an appointment, went to the doctor. What the heck's going on? They would always write me a prescription. I'd go home, I'd take the medication.
Mhm.
I would get better for a little bit, and then something else would crop up. And then it became this recurring cycle. And when I couldn't get relief from whatever that was, or the in-between periods, because got embarrassed because I was constantly going to the doctor all the
Mhm.
time. And they would always do a test or something, and they would say to me, "You're fine, you're in range, there's nothing wrong, here's a prescription, blah, blah, blah." Right. And so then I would end up at my pharmacy all the time. And weirdly, as this was happening to me, I became resigned almost to the fact that, well, I guess this is just how it is. I mean, I am getting older. I guess this is what happens. The body's breaking down. And weirdly, I just became acceptant of just feeling really crappy all the time. And what I didn't know is that that's really not normal to live that
Right.
way.
Yeah.
But, when you think about it in our culture here in the US, I mean, all you ever see on commercials is ads for different types of medications for this illness, for that ailment, for this chronic condition. And it's like it becomes just like normal in a
Mhm.
weird way, right? And then I went to the doctor, and one of these times, it was obviously this has been going on for a long time. And I said to my doctor, what is going on here? This is not normal. It just can't be normal to take antibiotics every 2 weeks or every month. There's something wrong with that. And she said, "You're right. It's really not healthy for you to be taking antibiotics." Okay, so what is the problem? She said, "I don't really know, but I think maybe you have an immune system problem. Like maybe your immune system's compromised in some way."
Mhm.
And that was like, okay, well, but she didn't tell me what I could do about that, unfortunately. I don't know if she didn't know what I could do about it because besides medications or anything like that. And so when I went home after that appointment, I kind of got annoyed and I got mad and I was like, what do you mean I don't take good care of myself? But really, she was right. I wasn't. But what's also interesting about that is like all of those things that were going on were like, the check engine light coming on in my car.
Mhm.
There's something going on here. And these were all red flags. And, because I was clueless and, you know, I don't I don't think a lot of people make this association that I didn't make it either, is that, like if you get a sinus infection and then maybe later you have a UTI, right? You may not associate that those two things are together because, the
Mhm.
one's in your head and one's in your body. Or, if you have GI issues like I did, and then you get a rash, you may not think to yourself that those two things are related.
Right.
And so that's part of the issue because it was like, I didn't know that all of these things were my body telling me that there's a problem with your immune system. It's
Right.
not functioning right. And you need to look at this and you need to get back into balance and, and fix that. But I didn't know. And you only know what you know, right?
Right.
So I didn't know, so I didn't do anything. But meanwhile, what was going on was my immune system was like, so overwhelmed, so spread so thin, that I was basically creating an environment inside of my body where cancer could grow and thrive. And so the reason why the immune system is such an important thing as far as that's concerned is because like our immune system is built with, you know, like you have a background in the military, right? So
Mhm.
our immune system is built like with a big surveillance team. It's like the SEAL team of your body, okay? And
Yeah.
basically its job is to do reconnaissance. It runs around your body looking for problems going on.
Mhm.
And then the job is for your immune system to like extinguish those problems and remove them before they become like a major
Issue.
terrorist attack,
Yeah.
right? Basically. But
Right.
what happens is when you're overwhelmed in a state like I was, or you're chronically inflamed in your body, you have inflammatory problems, or you maybe have other issues in your body that have been diagnosed. All of that stuff puts a strain on your team, on your immune system team. And basically, the team doesn't have enough guys to go out there and do the job of catching everything. So while they're putting out a fire here, or while they're cleaning up a mess over here, what happens is sometimes cancerous activity can develop in your body and it will go undetected. And then when it goes undetected because the team is spread too thin,
Right.
that's when it has a chance to grow and propagate, and boom, you have cancer.
Right.
And so the other thing that's important to know about that is that, you know, part of the thing that makes cancer so scary, and was scary to me, honestly, was the fact that it was so mysterious. It's like this thing that jumps out of nowhere and catches you off guard and takes you by surprise and takes over your life, right? And there's nothing you can do about it. And I think like my perception was always like that. It's like, this monster hiding under the bed or in the closet, and you're not going to know that they're there until it's too late, right? Which is pretty much how it feels when you get a diagnosis, because once you get a diagnosis, it's too late. You've got cancer, you can't do
Right.
anything about that other than, you know, nourish yourself so that your body can heal from it, right? But it's too late. It's there, right? And so the thing about it is that it's not something outside your body like that. Like if like let's take COVID for example, because everybody knows about COVID now, right? COVID is like a virus. It's outside of your body and you can potentially go outside, go somewhere and come in contact with it, and then it will enter your body and probably make you sick, okay?
Right.
Cancer's not like that. You don't go out somewhere and catch cancer.
Mm.
Cancer is actually can be part of our body's own natural regeneration process, which is kind
Really?
of funky to like wrap your head around, because basically we have like about a gajillion cells. Okay, that's not the actual number, but you get the picture. It's so
Right.
many cells. And every single one of those cells has a purpose that it's designed for. And it also has a lifespan or a time period to accomplish its purpose within that.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, what will happen when your body's functioning well is when your cells get old or they get damaged in some way, right? They are your immune system will go out and it will take those cells and destroy them and remove them from the body. And then the body creates a brand new cell to continue the work.
Okay.
When cancer develops, because your immune system is not there to catch it at the end of its life, there are certain cells that kind of get really damaged and then they don't act the way they are designed to act, and they go rogue. They go out and they start doing their own thing. And when your immune system's not there to catch them before they go totally off the rails, then they start behaving differently than they're supposed to. They start replicating
Right.
uncontrollably, and that's when you have cancer. So it's happening inside your body. And actually, all of us really can have cancer going on in your body at any given moment. And if your immune system is functioning the way it's supposed to, your immune system will go, it'll destroy those cells. You won't even know you had a problem.
Right.
So that's like really key to understand. And that's the reason why some people get cancer and some people don't.
Yeah, I hear a lot about the immune system, so that's really key. So what have you, from your research, what have you learned about how can we help our immune system? Because, chemo, radiation, and the meds that we take to resolve cancer, it's actually not helping. It's actually making the problem worse. And it actually blew my mind because I did research and I saw this from the American Cancer Society. It says here, chemo is known to be a greater risk factor than radiation therapy in causing leukemia.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
It is scary. And you know why that's even more scary? Because leukemia is actually a disease of your blood. It
Right.
affects your blood. And your blood is where all of your immune system surveillance team travel through your blood. And it's also
Exactly.
where all your blood cells are made
Right.
in the bone marrow into your blood, which is why that is extra scary because, you know, even if you want to have a shot at getting better from cancer, if you go through conventional treatment, you need your immune system. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like a weird catch 22 because the treatment that's offered destroys your immune system. So it's
Exactly.
like when you think about it, how
How does that work? How do
Right.
you, how do you, I don't get it.
Who can overcome that, right? It's really
Right.
weird. It's so weird when you think about it. So yeah, the immune system is key. And so you asked me, like, well, what do you do about that? And
Mm-hmm.
that was something that I had asked that question too. What do I do? The number one thing that I did was to strengthen the immune system really was to stop eating sugar,
Mm.
because sugar actually feeds cancer. And when you eat sugar, it actually suppresses your immune function.
Oh.
So if you're a person, and I was this person, so no judgment anywhere. I'm just telling you what my thing was. I have a huge sweet tooth,
Me
and
too.
huge. And that was my thing. I mean, sometimes I would be happier eating candy than eating food. And there were times, because even like before the diagnosis, like I said, I was like, this typical person. I'm a woman. I was, when I was diagnosed, I was just entering menopause. And, prior to that, I had always been like one of these people. I battled my weight up and down, up and down. And a lot of my mindset around that had to do with, how many calories am I eating? And so I would be happily sacrifice any calories from any food if it meant I could eat, 1,000 calories of candy. I was happy
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know was that feeds cancer and it suppresses the immune system. So that would be the number one thing. That was the number one thing that I had to come to terms with, and I had to say, okay, I'm going to not do that anymore. The other
Okay.
thing that really helps to build your immune system is to take a look at the foods that you're eating, because any types of processed foods out there, and I was a big lover of processed foods because they were very easy. They were easy, quick, easy to
Mm-hmm.
get, easy to eat, didn't take a lot of time, to prepare. But the problem with the processed foods is that, number one, most of them have a lot of sugar in them. And number two, a lot of them actually have a lot of chemical additives and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And anytime we're introducing those types of additives, we're building toxicity in our body. And when we're building toxicity in our body, it puts a strain on our immune system and our detoxification organs. So, those are the two big things I would say. Another big one is to drink water. I know, and that one probably sounds like super simplistic, like that's ridiculous,
Right.
but water is so key, because water helps you to detoxify some of these things out of your body, to flush things out of your body, and to actually to keep your blood oxygenated, so that way it can flow through your body freely. And when our blood is flowing freely, then our surveillance team is definitely moving around quicker
Mm-hmm.
than it
Mm-hmm.
would if we're not well oxygenated, or if our circulation is a little slow.
Right.
Yeah, so those are some things for sure.
So I'll just share my observation of society. We have so much of sugary and processed food all over the place, and it's way cheaper than organic, fresh foods because I think the government has subsidies for like wheat and certain farm products, right?
That's
But
true.
I don't think they have subsidies for organic fresh food, so that's why it's so expensive. So in my mind, it's like that model is not productive. It's actually counterproductive for the population. Well,
It's
what are your
true.
thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. There's a lot of food manufacturing that is subsidized from the FDA and actually recommended. I mean, that's a whole other podcast in itself, honestly,
Right.
to understand
Yeah.
the history behind that, because that's a long-standing history, you know. And because I think a lot of the goal is for food manufacturers to make money, that it's not lucrative for them to say to you, hey, don't eat this processed food, eat an apple. I mean, it's like, it doesn't serve them in any way.
Right.
And so I don't think that it's totally like malicious intent. I just think that it's a business,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that, they're looking out for their bottom line, not so much for the health of individuals, you know. And I think that that's an important thing to understand because if you look around, you know, what we have in our country today is not really, they call it healthcare, but it's not really a healthcare model. It's more about sick care because
Right.
everybody's sick in some way and they're just looking for, you know, relief of their symptoms. And the thing to understand is that because everything in our body is connected and if you are experiencing any types of symptoms, it's really important to get down to the root of,
Mm-hmm.
why that's happening to you and how to optimize how well your body responds to these things and to optimize how strong your immune system is, you know, and also things like how to how to regain control over what's happening in your body because that happens. We start to feel like we're out of control and there's like nothing we can do about it. But I think it's important to get that perspective and then also to understand that we as consumers have that choice,
Mm-hmm.
and I can say honestly, I was totally pro processed food camp for like almost all of my life up until I, developed breast cancer. I was given a breast cancer diagnosis, and by understanding what that really means, that gives you the choice to make
Mm-hmm.
the evaluation and also understanding that, like I had mentioned to you before, the revelation that I had that, wow, every single thing I'm eating is impacting my body one way or another. Understanding that is another factor because then it just builds this whole awareness about, well, what am I eating? Is that going to be really good for me or is it not? And then interestingly, when you make those shifts, like this happened to me too, like when you start to make those shifts, your body actually starts responding. You
Mm-hmm.
feel better. Like in
Yeah.
my case, I changed everything about what I ate. I totally moved away from processed food and it was no small thing because that was the way what I was used to, but I made the effort to move away from that and flood my body with, real whole foods. And the benefit of doing that is that every single one of those things has a nutrient that's designed to, you know, optimize the way your body works and how it functions and to strengthen your immune system. So that way you can support your body's own healing processes by doing that, And
Mm-hmm.
then when that starts to happen, amazing things happen. Like, in my case, I got my energy back because for years I didn't feel great. I just didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that wasn't normal, So like I got my energy back. I started looking better. I felt better. Everything that I did, I could feel my body responding to. And when that starts happening, it's like, wow, there's really something to this
Mm-hmm.
because I feel different. And I think, and I must have looked different because people started commenting. They started saying, wow, you look really good. What are you doing? And I'll be honest, I wasn't brave. Like when I got my breast cancer diagnosis and then I decided to do this off the wall thing. I didn't run around and broadcast and say, hey, guess what? I have cancer and I'm doing something really
Yeah.
weird and crazy. I didn't do
Yeah.
that. I just was, walking my path and doing what I knew that I needed to do, detoxifying my body. And then people started like noticing. They were like, wow. And then this is interesting too, from the female side. Like I mentioned when I was diagnosed, I had entered menopause and I was one of the lucky ones. I gained like tons of weight, which is common when people enter
Yeah.
menopause. I couldn't get it off no matter what. And that was another thing I had resigned myself to. Well, I guess I'm just going to be chubbier. That's it. And as I changed everything about myself, but about the way I ate and the way I lived, weight started coming off naturally on its own. And I ended up losing, after I changed my whole diet and detox, I ended up losing like 30 pounds.
Wow.
And I've kept that off. I mean, this 8 years later, and it never came back, which was not my experience with all the dieting I had done my whole life, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like, it's amazing what really happens. Amazing, amazing things happen when you decide to make that shift and, take a look at what you're doing and make some different choices. Yeah.
So do share it with us. What do you eat every day?
I eat really clean. Um,
Okay.
when I started my whole after the diagnosis, I was very strict and I was borderline vegan at that point. I did a lot of juicing. I ate a lot of fruits and vegetables, and I stayed away from a lot of meat products.
Mm,
And there's reasons behind that. I mean, for me, because of the whole cancer thing, and I had to be careful about my hormonal balance, which I didn't know was unbalanced, which is a whole other podcast. But, I had to be conscious of the fact that, conventionally grown animals for food, they're usually given a lot of hormones and
mhm.
antibiotics and stuff like that. So that way they can stay healthy enough to grow to the point where they can become processed for our foods, but everything they eat, we eat. So I had to like
Right.
stay away from that stuff for, obvious reasons. So now, 8 years later, I still stay clean with my eating. I mean, I do eat probably 80% is all vegetables or fruits. And then there are some smaller portions of my diet that include fish, wild caught fish,
Okay.
cold water fish that are high in like omega-3, things like cod. I like cod and I like halibut and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Salmon's also a good choice. I got to be honest, I'm not a huge lover of the way salmon tastes, but I will eat
Oh,
it. Some people love salmon though. So yeah, so it's mostly a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit. I'd still do juicing. I just try to make sure I eat a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, very clean. And what's interesting about that is like I think there's a thought process, like especially with a cancer diagnosis, people have a tendency to think, okay, I'm just going to buckle down. I'm going to go through the treatment. I'm going to go back to my life the way it was.
yeah, that's true.
But it's very important, whatever you decide to do, when you like, I found that even after I did what I did, till I got retested and I was given my NED all clear, which is no evidence of disease, I didn't really want to go back to
Mm,
what I had eaten before, because I had found that I didn't feel well when I ate those other foods that I had been used to for my whole life. My
right,
body responded and it changed and it started wanting really good food,
right,
food that was really going to be nourishing. And that's a total key to avoiding recurrence, especially if you have been diagnosed with cancer, and if you have been diagnosed with cancer and you're going through conventional treatment, thinking about making these shifts is super important if you want to rebuild your body after going through, an intensive treatment regimen that is normally associated with any kind of cancer. But so now, that's just the way I eat. That's what I
right.
like to eat, and that's what I feel good when I eat. I feel, and it's cool because like you get this awareness. Like I never like, and have you ever eaten something and it tastes amazing, but after you just want to lay down and take a nap and go to sleep?
Pasta.
So like if you ever experience that, that's your body sending you a sign saying, hey, this is probably not the most beneficial thing that you're eating.
Right, right.
I'm not going to say it's poisonous, but I'm just saying, your body's like telling you. Or like if you've ever, like, this is a funny story. When after I had made that change and I had changed all my diet and I was really eating super clean and I got my NED, I was with my son, and like I didn't impose this whole lifestyle change on my family. My husband and son have since come along with it because they notice how they feel the way they eat. They've gotten an awareness. But back then, I didn't impose it. And I was out somewhere with my son one day, and our practice had always been when we were together, we would always swing through the drive-through, whether it was breakfast or lunch, and we'd get some kind of great snack that we could eat in the car.
Yeah.
So we were going somewhere and we went to, a fast food place because we used to like their breakfast sandwiches, right? So he wanted a breakfast sandwich, and I always used to love like those little fried hash browns or those tater tot things that
Mm-hmm.
they called hash browns, right? So we go through the drive-through, he orders his thing, he gets those tater tot hash browns things, and the smell was killing me because it was like, smell. And so I said to him, can you please just give me one of those tater tots? And he was like, are you sure? I said, yeah, just one. He said, okay. So he gives me a tater tot. I eat the tater tot. And after I ate it, this is a thing that was like this big. I was sick for the entire day after I ate one tater tot because my body had just shifted and
Mm,
we don't like this. And then, once that happens, it's like it reinforces how much your body has changed and how much your body wants really, really good food.
right.
So, yeah, so it's like that's a awareness is like a big part of it for sure.
The whole message here is listen to your body. If it says no, just listen, right? You're
Right.
gonna be in trouble if you don't.
Right. And if it's saying, hey, I got a problem, that's another important time to
Exactly.
listen. Yeah, because
Right.
then that gives you the opportunity to do something about it. And I always tell people, obviously nobody ever wants to hear you have breast cancer. I mean, I didn't want to hear it, but it actually ended up being something that totally changed my life for the better because it gave me the opportunity to it was like a wake-up call. It gave me
Hmm.
the opportunity to make some changes that have totally transformed my health and my entire life. So I don't recommend you doing that though, because you don't have to wait until you're diagnosed with something to
Oh
make
yeah.
these kind of changes. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like the best kept secret.
Wonderful. Now I want to move to your business. How do you serve the collective? What services and programs do you have for the collective?
I'm a health coach, so that's what I do. I work with people who are interested in achieving better health, yeah, on many different levels. Like I work with people who are really interested in preventing breast cancer. I work with people who have been diagnosed with cancers who are either looking for support as they go through treatment, like nutritional support as they go through treatment, or they're looking for alternatives and they're looking for a more natural path. Then I'm happy to serve in that way. And I also work with people after, if they've gone through
Mm,
treatments, to avoid recurrence by helping them to create like an anti-cancer lifestyle of their own that they can actually sustain so they can avoid recurrence. I love working with people, especially who are just ready to make a change. And my heart of hearts, honestly, is to really work with people who are like in that 10-year period
mm,
before something's going on in their body to
right.
help them raise awareness. And typically, like most cancers, well, it's changing now though, unfortunately, but most cancers, that used to be considered like, an older person's illness. And many times women were diagnosed, when they hit menopause. So that would tell you like in your 40s, when your body starts going through shifts, like it starts happening, like you end up in the beginning stages of perimenopause and things start happening, your hormones start shifting, your body starts feeling like it's going haywire.
Mm,
I work with people in that space too, because I help them to like rebalance their hormones, which is another really important indicator of whether or not you might be at a greater risk for breast cancer, women who have fibrocystic breasts, things like that, and just help them to like regain control over what's going on and help them to navigate that period of their life. So that way, things like they don't have to, chronic illnesses that are associated as we age don't have to become inevitable for them,
mhm.
especially cancer. And not only that, but it can help them to gracefully navigate once they get into that menopausal period. So that way they can have really great health even when they get to the next chapter of their life, and have
Right.
energy like they forgot they had in their 20s, which is where I was.
Okay.
So that's what I do. And I
Eh,
help them nutritionally. I help them to detox. I help them um, to transition their diet into a healthier diet. And I help them to do it in a way that's manageable for them because it's not like there's no cookie cutter solution because every single person is different. Like you live your life in a different way than I live mine.
Hmm.
Everybody's eats differently, even though we don't think we do. But, the key to doing any of this is really what can you sustain? So, like I could tell you, give you this really stringent Spartan kind of diet routine, and you could look at it and say, yeah, that's great. But when the, push comes to shove, you may not be able to stay with that because it may
Right.
not be reasonable for your life. So consistency is the key. So I help to provide people with, their own personal kind of blueprint, help them to create consistency so they can follow through and accountability so that way that they can really achieve what they want and they don't get started gung ho and then peter out halfway through or feel like it's not worth doing. And what's amazing though is that when people, do that, and I have the honor of actually working with them, amazing things happen for them. People lose weight naturally in a healthy way, they keep it off. I've had clients who their blood pressure comes back into a normal range. I've had people who are pre-diabetic reverse their pre-diabetes. I've had people who no longer have chronic pain and they don't have to manage it with medication. I mean, it's just incredible how powerful nutrition is and what it can do for you. It's the most amazing, amazing thing.
And where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Well, you guys can find me on Instagram. I'm at good_nature_wellness. You can find me on Facebook at Good Nature Wellness. That's the name of my company, Good Nature
Okay.
Wellness. You can find me through email, healthcoachingwithbarbara@gmail.com, or on my website, www.goodnaturewellness.com. Yeah, you can find me in all those places. And also, I have a gift I'd like to give to your listeners, if that's okay with
Yes.
you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's a resource that I created. It's called 5 Things That I Wish I Had Known Before I Was Diagnosed with Breast Cancer. And in it, I share some more details about my story and also some really important strategies and tips that you guys can start using right away that can actually reduce your risk and help to build your immune system back up. And you can get that at my website. It's www.goodnaturewellness.com/5 things freebie, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Oh, I can put it in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I have a signature closing question here for you.
Sure.
What is your closing message for humanity to help in our collective healing and empowerment?
Wow, that's a deep question. I would say that every one of us has a purpose. And I think that in order to fulfill that purpose and to be the best version of yourself, that you really need to gain the awareness that we're talking about. So that way you can be 100%. I think that it's important for people to know that they can improve their situation, and by doing that they can improve the situation of others. It's like that proverbial thing, put your oxygen mask
Oh,
on
yeah.
first and then you can help everybody. And then with that, the other thing I would tell people is, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until you are faced with something that's life shattering in order to get yourself into that position where you're working at 100%, your body's functioning at 100%. You can do some things in this moment, and everything that you do in this moment, your body will respond to. It'll make you stronger, and also it will give you a voice that you can share and impart hope to other people. And I think that that's a big part of that too.
Wonderful. I so resonate with that message. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom that I think will help so many people in the collective, specifically women. So question, do you also work with men or do you work specifically with women?
I do work with men. Sometimes
Okay.
I do. Yeah. Most of my clients have been women, but I have actually worked with some men too. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you again for being here And for everybody who's watching and listening, thank you for your time. And until next time, bye for now.